Granny Jenny again from America, middle of nowheres from a hillbilly state, here in my basement again in my headquarters. I have an extra bedroom downstairs, and this is kind of where I go when I need to have some alone time or quiet time, and it's where I do my best strategizing. So anyhow, I want to give you a little bit more background on my life too. My parents were, I had raised by wonderful people. My mom was the nurturer in the family. And that's kind of where I learned the art of more the, I don't know if the art or the science of nursing, the nurturing part of nursing. But when I really, really came and flowered and came into my own as a nurse, is when I started taking after my father, who was a real shit disturber. And I mean that is the highest compliment. The man knew homelessness as a child during the Great Depression. And not only that, he was the scapegoat in the family. His father was severely alcoholic, abusive. In fact, even took a knife to my father's throat and almost slashed it, almost killed him. But he abused my father, and my father was the child that he would take all of his father would take all his frustrations out on them. Instead of turning my father into just some horrible human being, my father, in fact, understood what it's like to be a scapegoat. But he was also a fighter and a shit disturber, and it often got him into trouble at times, and not trouble because he was a bad man or that he did something wrong, but trouble in effect that people don't like a shit disturber. They don't like to be called out for being for doing the wrong thing. And my father never had a problem doing that. Unfortunately, it probably cost him in his career, but my dad didn't care. My dad didn't care. As long as he could call it out. And that was the most important. And when I started to kind of understand him, and kind of take after him, although I took off, the nurturing part of me was my mother. But that part of me where, okay, you got to fight. You got to fight. You just got to do it. You got to do what's right. And when I was started taking after my dad is when I really, really became, I think, a better nurse. So when I incorporated both of my parents, I should say. Now, growing up, my father was obviously not a nurse. He worked in a grocery store. He stocked shelves. But what he did was he loved history, and he instilled in me a love of history and a love of military. He loved military history. So I've always enjoyed it too because I just always loved hearing how he would describe certain things to me. And we would always, of course, always watch, all the wonderful movies that came up in the post World War II. And actually, when we would watch that movies when they came on TV, he was really good at describing what the general was doing, why that certain tactic happened, or if there was something in that movie that was incorrect. My father knew it. So my father was a wonderful amateur historian. It's totally self-educated. My father should have gone to college or university, but there was no money in the family. He came during, he was born during the Great Depression. So my dad unfortunately had to have a job that he definitely was he was suited to be a college history professor. So, and as lo and behold, a connection to Lucy Letby, my maiden name was Gil, and his first name was Richard. So I had a Richard Gill in my life, and I miss him dearly. We lost him literally in 2016, and it literally, when I look back on it, it was just a few weeks before that poor mom of baby Owen P lost her children. So I lost him then too. But I kind of that fight in me, that shit disturber in me, what you're seeing is my father in me. So just as Lucy Leppy has a Richard Gill in her life, and I got a feeling, and I'm saying this as a compliment, he's a bit of a shit disturber. Wonderful, because he otherwise, he fought for Lucy and he's fought for other nurses too. So my dad would be that fighter too. Even though my dad he probably wasn't a good numbers man, but he had that same personality. So what has kind of helped me, and I think it might kind of help you too, is if we kind of look back in history. And I know a lot of you are getting very frustrated in the fact that things aren't moving ahead with Lucy, that, it might take a few years, but I'm going to say, hold on. That is probably a good strategy. And the reason I say that is that I'm looking back in history. First of all, I don't know if a lot of you know that, but when they broke the Nazi code, the Enigma, whoever was in that your War Department gathered a team, and it wasn't just mathematicians and brilliant people, scientists, that at all. He put together linguists. He put together people from all walks of life, people from arts, everything, and he wanted every single mind that thought in every single way to figure out how to break that code, and that's how it did it. It was definitely a group effort, and it is portrayed in that wonderful movie. I think of The Imitation Game, but there is a little bit more background to it. There was a lot more help from other people, but the gentleman that did that obviously is a hero in my view. But again, it took many different things, and here, we're all different. We're all different. I can give you the nursing perspective. There's other people out there that, whatever you do in your walk of life, trust me, there is some area that you can help so far as getting Lucy free. You don't know it yet, but there is that part of the brain that is different than, we all have a different part of our brain that works, that we can just put together. Another thing that I love from history, and I remember my dad telling me this story, but the reason America kind of won the tank battle in World War II was because of a taxi driver from New York. Apparently, the America was having a lot of problems with his tanks getting through the hedgerows that had built up over centuries in Europe, and just breaking through that. And he wasn't even a sergeant; he was a private. He was a guy that used to be a taxi driver before he got, before they slapped a uniform on him. He noticed. He goes, "Well, those tanks, they have Chrysler engines, and I drove a Chrysler engine taxi, and this is how I plowed through the snow in New York. He goes, I know you can plow through this hedgerow, because if I could plow through the snow in New York, it could be inches or feet high. You can plow through this, and all you got to do is just weld on this piece in front of the tank, and it's just going to plow through it." Well, he went and grabbed his lieutenant, who went, "Oh, that's good," and he apparently he sent it up the chain of command. And within like 48 hours, I think a lot of the tanks they put the welding or whatever they need to do, and it plowed right through. And just an FYI, the Nazi soldiers, the foot soldiers, would have never, ever approached their officer with a suggestion, because they were regarded as mere peasants. And how dare you approach an officer? You follow our commands. You don't give us suggestions. So that is kind of one of the reasons the Allies won World War II, is that they listened to the foot soldiers. Another thing that I have come to really appreciate, and it's just within the last few years, I've discovered a Chinese philosopher called Sun Tzu, who is from like the 500s BC. Anyhow, he is the gentleman. He wrote The Art of War. And this book is taught at West Point, which is our military academy, and I'm sure it's taught at every military academy, but it's now taught in business schools. And and I'd like to just say who I think who our Sun Tzu is, and that is Mark McDonald. And again, if and how this battle will be won. It's not so much the battle, but it's the war that will be won. It will be won through the use of using history as the example. Okay, so let me go through the 5 principles of Sun Tzu. And basically, this is the man where, you ever heard the phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? That's where it comes from. And the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Okay? Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Okay. And this is probably one of his most greatest quotes that's everyone knows about, but they don't know where it came from. If you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Okay. So the 5 principles that Sun Tzu has is, first of all, moral law. Okay, that is the principle that you become a moral leader, someone who has a complete accountability for his actions, someone who people will just follow because they know this person is right or this person is doing the right thing, and so you'll follow him no matter what. Heaven is the second principle, and that's basically to know your weather and your seasons. Well, I think we know Mark McDonald knows when to strike. Okay, and we all need to be patient, because he is playing he the enemy. He is playing their game, but people don't realize it. He's playing the game against them. Okay, he's playing within the boundaries. Earth, and that is to know your terrain and your environment, so he knows where to strike. Okay, Sun Tzu would even describe things like you go up on the mountain and you roll logs down the mountain. Okay, well, I think Mark McDonald did a great thing by going to Guernsey and he took out Sandy Bowen. Okay, he did. Also, his strategic use of Richard Taylor, that was a masterstroke. In December, Richard Taylor, in just a very gentle, very calm, very wonderful way a neonatologist and a pediatrician is able to communicate, just kind of basically said in a very quiet tone, well, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing I punctured a kid's liver. That was wonderful. That was talk about a strike across the bow. And then to go in for the kill, literally, he had Shu Li. And Shu Li volunteered. Shu Li knew he was doing right. So Shu Li then came in February. And I know some of you are very, very upset that Brewery or Jerram have not been thrown in jail. They may never be. Okay, guess what? I can guarantee you, as a nurse, they are persona non grata in their career. They're destroyed. Jerram put everything into trying to, he's going to leave the Countess of Chester. He had to. His way out was through the media. He was going to become the next TV star, the next doctor, the next whatever. He was all over the media. Well, guess what? That's gone. And that is probably going to hurt more than if he's behind bars. In Brewery, I can guarantee you, I've worked with some of these guys. They think that they can play in the sandbox of someone like a Shu Li. They think there's, and he knew. I can read between the lines. You can tell that he wants to get the hell out of Countess of Chester. That's why he was sucking up to Yaxel over at a Liverpool Women's Hospital. And I can tell you right, he was buddies with the lead gastrointestinal surgeon at Alderhay. That guy was just awarded an OBE. I think that's a big time. That's a kind of a big award that you get kind of at Buckingham Palace or something. Something about you served the state or something. He was trying to do whatever he could. He knew he didn't have the brains. So what he was doing, he was sucking up to these guys, Alderhay and that. I do know he apparently in some of his emails he describes he's got to go give a lecture. I don't know if he was giving a lecture at the medical school or if he was just kind of giving one of these grand round lectures about he was the cardiology situation, but he was desperate to leave. He was desperate to leave a hospital that was a piece of shit. Okay, so that's kind of he was possibly trying to suck up to everyone, taking all these babies on, and he wasn't doing his job. His job was not on that. Okay. And another thing, let's go to number 4 with with Sun Tzu's 5 principles. The commander. So he knows he's picking leadership, okay? And this is all about leadership. Trust me, there's a reason he's connected to David Davis, a leader in Parliament, Shu Lee, Richard Taylor, Colin Morley. Those guys are absolute leaders in medicine. He's also has Jim Thornton, who's an absolute, my understanding, he's a god so far as obstetrics is concerned in the most wonderful way. And he right now is doing the obstetrics. So he is putting, what he has done, he has put excellent leadership in. Now, the 5th principle is called method and discipline. And that's basically organization, logistics, command structure, and everything. And I don't, and let's face it, we haven't gotten any signals, have we, from Mark McDonald, us in the that are reading all this stuff, but us that are in social media, we haven't gotten any clues from him to shut up. In fact, if anything, he's keeping this purposely in the media. So we will talk about it. So we will spread the word. We are his foot soldiers. Okay? Now and again, Sun Tzu stresses the fact that sometimes you got to win 100 battles in order to win that war. But it's more important. It's not that first battle or that second battle. It is you go in for the long, however long it takes. And that way you destroy your enemy. You always allow that enemy, if they want to surrender, you always give them that option. And he has given the option. Remember, he would not publicly call out Brewery. He's not publicly calling out anyone directly in the courts. He's not calling anyone out by name. He's saying, okay, come on. And that's what Sun Tzu says. Come on. Do whatever you need to do. He's allowing the rats to jump the ship. And I have this feeling that the rats are jumping the ship right now behind the scenes that we don't know about. So again, if Lucy is not released in 2026, it's okay. But what's more important and more important for her, because we got to clear her name. Because if we release her now, there's still people out there that think she's a murderer. And we know she's not. Okay? We know she's not. So, and so let's keep the faith. And like I say, I gave you that example of the taxi driver. There's a taxi driver in all of us. I can give you the nursing outlook. Some of you may think, oh my God, my background. Well, I have a background in this or that. What do I know? What can I do? Every one of you are like the people that in that enigma. That's how they broke the code, the Nazi code. Okay? Something's going to come up to you. You see the world in a different way. You see the world different than I do, or that person next to you does. And you're going to come up with some sort of an idea. And if not, it's okay. Either way, just tell your neighbor. Put the word out. Just when you're having coffee with someone, I talk about Lucy a lot to people that, trying to gain a little momentum here in America. It's only so much I can do, because basically my nursing leadership is about as national leadership is about as good as yours, because they refuse to put out any kind of a statement saying, I support my fellow nurse. I support her, because as nurses, good nurses, we are all, in essence, foot soldiers. And the only way that we can provide the best care that we can for patients and survive, so we can do that, is to back each other up. And my nursing leadership will not do it. And everyone knows, it's obvious. And they know about Lucy. I'm sure they know. I know they know. But of course they will not rock the boat like your nursing leadership does too. It's going to take us foot soldiers. It's going to take a granny in her basement. Okay. And if I only get across to a dozen people, who cares? I got across to a dozen people. It doesn't matter. But I'll tell you one thing. Just as Shuley took out and Richard Taylor took out, and they absolutely took out the consultants. Okay. I am determined. There were some bad nurses at Countess of Chester. Now, it was only a small group, and Lucy was not part of that group. All right. I can tell with her text messages, and I can tell I'm sifting through all this, and I can tell who the good ones are and the bad ones. And I tell you, there is a particular nurse. There is a particular nurse that threw Lucy under the bus with her testimony. And I can guarantee you that, and she started with baby A. And the reason she started with baby A is that she gave bad nursing care to that baby. I will detail this later on because I'm waiting. Like Sun Tzu says, you don't go to war without being prepared. And I'm preparing. Okay. And that poor jury, they heard from Dewey, they heard from the consultants, they turned what this and that, the parents of baby A. Well, they heard from Lucy's own colleague. And that own colleague threw her under the bus. And it wasn't, now some of the nurses had to testify, and some of the nurses had to testify, and they had to save their own behinds. I understand that. And a lot of them did. I can see some of the testimony, and when the prosecutor was just trying to make Lucy sound like an awful person, or the baby was stable, they had a way of hemming and hawing and saying, well, so that was perfectly fine. And I'm going to give a shout out to a wonderful nurse at the trial. His name was Christopher Booth. Unfortunately, he wasn't called out until late. I think it was later on in one of the later babies. And by then, the jury had clocked out. And he even stated in the trial that Lucy was a conscientious and a good nurse. But that was just too late. I mean, the damage was already done. And it started with baby A. And it started, not only was there bad medical care, but there was bad nursing care with that baby too. And that nurse was higher than Lucy. She was a band 6. She knew better. She was one of the nurses. She actually even went through the intensive care training with Lucy. And not with Lucy, before Lucy. So she was higher up. So she was actually at a band 6 level, and I made it to a band 6 level 2 as a nurse when I was in the beginning, early in my career. So you have some sort of a leadership kind of thing. Your shift charge, you train people. I did all that. So you're not management, but yet you take on some sort of a leadership position during the shift, during the things. And although you're not a manager, you're essentially you are a leader, and you are given that responsibility because you've been there long enough. So obviously that nurse did not show leadership things. She was not a Sun Tzu. And as I explained yesterday in my video, how my fond memories were of nurses that we had each other's back. Well, I have some really bad experiences with some nurses that were lazy. And unfortunately, and I am ashamed to say this as a nurse, there are, and in any group, you're going to get that little group there that's a little on the lazy side, that resents someone like a nurse Letby, does the work, because it reminds them that they really are, let's face it, shit. And they will do it again and do that. And I honestly do believe that there are nurses out there. There's women out there that instead of doing the hard work of a nurse Letby or any other woman that's like that, what they'll do is they'll latch themselves on to a man of power in order to get that power. And they will also use bully tactics, just like a schoolyard bully. And they will kind of get those other women behind them. They'll become the leader. And I'm wondering if this nurse here that was with baby A, I won't mention her name yet, but I will later on. I can guarantee you. I'm just getting my ammunition. So anyhow, if you want, if there is another person, I'd like to suggest another person for you all to look at. She's not a nurse. She's an archaeologist, or does some sort of archaeology thing, which makes for an incredible investigator. And if you really want to get into the weeds of Baby A, which basically started all this, it was bad medical care. And there were three consultants that screwed up. And I will explain Baby A at a later date. It was Brewery that screwed up, Salati that screwed up, and Ravi with one baby. And there was a reason that started it. And the person that has uncovered a lot of, if not most of this stuff, is a woman by the name of Rosie Burton. And Rosie is spelled Rosey. You can look at her on Facebook. There's a Lucy Letby book, and the stuff that she's putting out is astonishing. You can also go on Twitter, and she goes under the, I don't call it a handle or a title, of Frank and Rosie. And remember, that's spelled Rosey, and it's those three words are one, Frank and Rosie. Again, she's putting out wonderful stuff. So again, this is exactly the person that Mark McDonald wants as part of his foot soldiers. And I think we all are, every single one of us. And anyone who can see this and see this through their own lens and see this through whatever their life experiences are, and see that this is just a horrible thing. And again, let's use history, and let's be patient, and let's follow. And if Mark McDonald wants us to shut up, we'll shut up. I don't think he does. I think he knows that we are the people that are keeping this out in the thing. And if anything, we are the people, and not everyone will see, we will not see justice, all these bad characters, but we're watching them twist in the wind. And in the long run, the reputations are destroyed. And that it probably, and when it comes to a narcissist, that is the most egregious thing you can do. That is worse than throwing them behind bars. So let's get the narcissist, and let's have a good year, and let's be patient. I'm positive. I just love having Mark McDonald as my Sun Tzu. And I love Mark McDonald, is the fact that he is a Sun Tzu for Lucy. And just a FYI, his background, he started off, he worked in the NHS. He was a porter, and then he would put casts on people too. And then I think he also worked in the OR as kind of we would call him an OR tech. I don't know what you would describe it, but he saw behind the scenes what can go on in a hospital. So he totally understands the whole hierarchy, all that can go on. And I'm so glad he's on my side. Take care. Tomorrow's the new year. Have a happy and safe New Year's Eve. Bye-bye.